Pluto, the planet known as the god of the underworld, re-enters Capricorn from September 1st to November 19th. This is the last time that any of us who are alive today will experience Pluto in Capricorn, the sign affiliated with the Devil card in the tarot deck for good reason. Capricorn is a sign known for its ambitious tendencies, which can be ruthless at times. It's Earth ruled by Saturn, and thus there's a heavy emphasis on accumulating wealth. This is a sign where we are focused on our material needs for survival's sake. And thus, as many of you know out there, since Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, it's been a pretty rough ride for many of us. And so I'm filming this video well in advance to help you prepare for Pluto re-entering Capricorn, wrapping up the lessons it's been trying to teach us over the course of the last decade and a half before landing firmly in Aquarius for the next 2 decades come November. And so let's think about the architecture of the sign of Capricorn itself. In Western astrology, per the Hellenistic tradition, Capricorn is Earth ruled by Saturn, it's the moon's exile, it's Mars's exaltation, and it's Jupiter's fall. So already we can see why this sign might be affiliated with the devil. We've got the two malefics both quite dignified here. And then we've got the moon, the planet that we affiliate with our physical body, with our subconscious, our unconscious, our emotional world, our perceptions, as well as Jupiter, the greater benefic, both debilitated in this sign. That speaks to the general climate, the general flavor of the atmosphere of Capricorn. And so as we're going through this review today, I want you to think about what whole sign house in your chart at home Capricorn lands in. What house topics does Capricorn cover? You also then want to think about where Saturn is in your chart at home. Saturn being the ruler of Capricorn, like a king ruling over a kingdom, or your boss at work ruling over your team. The team's experience and ability to perform, ability to be happy on the job really depends on how your boss is doing, what your boss is dealing with at home, what is your boss's general demeanor. Same with a king ruling over a kingdom. If that king is a tyrant, it's not going to be very fun for the subjects of that kingdom. And so at home, you want to think about, is Saturn in your chart debilitated or afflicted somehow, some way? You can think about this with Mars as well. Mars being exalted in Capricorn. The ruler of a sign tends to speak to solar themes, the overall experience. That's going to help you assess at home how your relationship with the Capricorn archetype tends to go in general. And now that really being on blast, quite amplified since 2008 when Pluto entered the scene, the god of the underworld. Pluto is a planet that has everything to do with death, resurrection, the complete breakdown of Saturnine reality, forcing us to build a new normal reality. In lower expression, Pluto is affiliated with psychotic episodes, agents of breakdown and decay, the underworld, organized crime, terrorism, Machiavellianism, political power gone awry. But it's not all bad with Pluto. Pluto in higher expression is affiliated with radical transformations in consciousness, with healers, with therapists, teachers. But all of that should really help paint a picture of exactly how challenging this transit has been, both on a cultural, global, political, socioeconomic level, right? That all being Saturn's domain, as well as on a personal level. I believe on a personal level, Pluto being in the sign affiliated with the Devil card in the tarot deck, each of us has been confronted with our personal version of purgatory. The fact that we have a culturally understood concept of hell, that's an archetype we all understand on a pretty primal level, means that we all have a deep personal connection to it. And I think astrology, the fact that we all have a completely different natal chart from one another, shows us that in reality, our personal concept of hell is in fact very personal, very specific to us. And it's pretty likely, especially considering the conditions that Saturn and Mars are in your personal natal chart at home, each of us has been confronted with some version of our own personal purgatory, our own personal devil, since Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. And really specifically in the last several years, as Pluto has been traversing the last decan of Capricorn, the last 10 degrees being the trickiest, the summary, of all the previous degrees leading up to that point. It was in this last decan as well that Pluto met up with Jupiter and Saturn. They never met in an exact conjunction, but they traveled for quite a while close enough that we saw something pretty major that affected every single one of us, that being COVID. Or rather, since nobody knows if the planets themselves are actually causing what's going on down here or simply a symbolic representation, that's what was going on up in the sky, Jupiter in its fall, Saturn in its domicile, meaning Saturn was extremely powerful and ruling over what was taking place, meeting up, traveling with Pluto in the last decan of Capricorn when COVID and the larger pandemic came into being. And now here we all are in the present day, figuring out what our lives on a personal level, as well as life as a collective, if you will, looks like on the other side of that, in the reverberations, the consequences of all that took place during that time. Let's also not forget that here in the United States in 2008, when Pluto entered Capricorn, we saw the stock market crash. And an otherwise robust economy we'd all been able to depend on for a while, this idea of the American dream, showed some unnerving fragility. And now we're making our way into the Pluto and Aquarius era, which is also ruled by Saturn. Aquarius is Saturn's air domicile. Unlike Capricorn, no planet is exalted or in its fall there, and it is the sun's exile. It is a place where our ego gets emptied out, per its affiliation with the star card in the tarot deck. It's a sign that has a lot to do with figuring out where we fit in the larger ecosystem for the survival of the larger whole. It's a sign in all of our charts where we like to really feel important and valued on an intellectual level by our peers as valuable to the larger working order. And so needless to say, it's an important time of transition that we're all in together between Saturn's two domains, indicating major transformation, Pluto, to our larger working structural order, Saturn. Now let's go back to Capricorn. In his book Horoscope Symbols, Robert Hand writes of Capricorn that it has a strong social orientation, most at home with social consensus about what is real, important, and acceptable. Capricorn is strongly influenced by authority figures. It needs to be in control and effective in practical terms. It behaves as a representative of the social order concerned with detailed practical implementation of the consensus reality rather than abstract principles themselves. It is over-serious. It justifies play and rationalizes enjoyment by its social contributions. It has wry, self-deprecating humor. It's an influence for achievement in conformity with consensus reality. This is why Capricorn is such a tribally oriented sign. It's more concerned with the consensus, with the agreed upon collective illusion, the larger tribe, the larger whole, than what's actually true, what's actually real, what's actually just, or moral or integral. And so isn't it interesting that while Pluto's been in Capricorn, we've also had Neptune, the planet all about confusion and delusion, escapism, fantasy, at home in Pisces, and the extra powerful, Pisces being a sign that also lends itself to themes of escapism, fantasy, imagination, illusion, and deception. Meanwhile, Pluto, the god of the underworld, is all about breaking down Saturnine structures. I think this is why, especially on a personal level, as far as figuring out what your personal purgatory, your personal devil that you've been having to confront and transform by way of facing off with over the course of this transit has been especially rough, but one of the beautiful manifestations of Saturn and Pluto, one of the things they have in common is they tend to indicate that the rougher the road, the more challenging the transit, the journey, the bigger the payoff, or rather profundity in transformative power. And now let's think about Mars being exalted here as well. Mars is our planet of survival. Mars tends to identify with whomever it believes can ensure its survival or your survival. It doesn't necessarily love being the leader. What it does love is fighting on behalf of a general or a leader or a solar figure that it can really get behind, that it believes in. It's the planet affiliated with strength, athletics, masculinity, our fight or flight reaction, aggression, force, vigor, and the military. And so if we pull up the chart of the moment that Pluto re-enters Capricorn for the last time, it's in a Mars-ruled Egyptian bound, so it's like a double dose of Mars flavor in these last degrees of Capricorn where Pluto is going to be hanging out. out, and Pluto walks right into a quincunx with Mars. Mars at 28 degrees Gemini. Mars moving about a degree every 2 days. So they'll hang out in that quincunx for about 3.5, 4 days. Quincunxes don't have a very large orb. We really only want to consider about a degree or two, but that degree or two tends to be pretty powerful. Quincunxes help us eliminate blind spots. It helps us identify areas of weakness, particularly involving Mars here, in order to strengthen us. And so this is how we start. Then if we fast forward to the end, November 19th, notice Pluto starts off this finally firmly landed in Aquarius journey in the opposition to Mars. Mars at 4 degrees Leo. Opposition's having a much wider orb than quincunxes. And so this Pluto-Mars signature is something we're really going to want to pay attention to throughout. Really a three-way combo though, right? Because Pluto is in Saturn-ruled territory no matter where he is for the foreseeable future. And when we're talking about Pluto, Saturn, and Mars combined, we're talking about commanding powers of discipline and ability to tackle the most demanding tasks, the strength to face any challenge and persevere, a committed forbearance of aggression and reactivity. So the ability to really keep those in check, not waste our martial, precious survival energy in competition or struggles or frustrations or nuisances, I should say, that don't deserve our energy. We're able to really rise above if we can pay close attention to this combination and try to figure out the better of it in ourselves. Now, the lower expression that we want to look out for, a lot of the qualities, the tendencies in ourselves that we're likely to be working on during this period of time, are ruthless levels of ambition and aggression, a tendency to create or seek out dangerous situations, a driving need to butt heads and confront others, and chronic feelings of bitterness or hate, as well as disempowerment. And then if we scoot back to Pluto's last moments, last days in Capricorn, notice Venus is on the scene. I think Venus is really important to pay attention to here as well. She enters Capricorn on November 11th. So that whole last week, these two are in a whole sign conjunction. Per the Hellenistic tradition, that means their flavors are blended. It's not the loudest conjunction, but we can feel it. Now, why this is particularly significant to this transit, I believe, is if you think back to December 2021, Venus went retrograde in late degrees Capricorn in a conjunction to Pluto. I know for me and my clients, this was a particularly challenging period of time. Venus is the planet affiliated with the feminine, so a lot of us saw the shadow side of the feminine in close personal relationships, Venus also being representative of relationship, of social cohesion. A lot of us saw really difficult moments, transitions in our romantic relationships during this period of time. Speaking of the material, Capricorn being Earth ruled by Saturn, extremely materialistically focused and ambitious, Venus has a lot to do with wealth and material love, hedonism, luxury. Lower expression Venus is when we can take the internet shopping too far, or buy a more expensive watch or car than we might actually need in reality, and then wind up regretting later, just as examples. And so for you students of astrology at home out there, I think you're also going to want to think back to that period of time, that Christmas 2021 period of time. What was going on in your life along Venusian and Pluto themes? And that transit taking place in Capricorn, you can apply your Capricorn full sign house topic themes. If anybody needs help with those, you can grab this free PDF right off of my website. And so this video isn't meant to scare anyone by any means. We're already very familiar with Pluto and Capricorn's flavor in our lives. We've been experiencing it. We're all way too used to it because we've been living in it since 2008. I don't think Pluto in Aquarius is going to be easy. I think it's going to be dealing with the consequences of a lot of what was conjured up, what was initiated during the Pluto and Capricorn era, particularly as a collective, as a whole, as a species. But on a personal level, we're saying goodbye to the devil. In some regard, in some way, shape, or form, our personal concept of the devil, our personal concept of purgatory, of hell, should start to feel a lot less pervasive in our daily lives. I'm thankful that this is a quick trip, just a little over 2.5 months, and apart from the starting quincunx to Mars, and then the opposition to Mars that Pluto kicks off this last entry into Aquarius with, the aspects throughout really aren't that bad. The other good news, with Pluto entering Aquarius, Neptune entering Aries, and then Uranus entering Gemini in the next couple of years, this puts all of the outer transpersonal planets in harmony with one another. They are transitioning though. And so again, I don't think any of it's going to be easy, but there are some positive indicators going for us. I don't think we're totally doomed as a species, but per the Aquarian archetype, all that Saturn represents are larger social structures, what binds us together as a species. There's some seriously transformative work going on, as indicated by the brilliant system of code, symbolic representation that astrology is. So if you at home have been feeling personally victimized by this transit of Pluto's through Capricorn since 2008, I'm going to be offering a 2-hour-long reading special through the end of this transit, dedicated specifically to this topic. You know, especially if you're a Pluto and Scorpio out there, we've been contending with Uranus opposing our natal Pluto at the same time. This has not been astrology for the faint of heart. And this will not be a reading or a consultation, a 2-hour period of your life that is for the faint of heart. So please come into this session knowing that we're going to be diving really deep into your chart, into your relationship with the Capricorn archetype itself, your relationship with Pluto, your relationship with Saturn, your relationship with Mars. This being the furthest sign in the zodiac from Cancer, we'll probably also wind up talking about mom. The moon's exile in Capricorn. You know, in the modern era, so much of us only knowing lives of extreme convenience, Capricorn being ruled by Saturn dad, this is a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of old patterns of thought, memories from our childhood coming to the surface in really uncomfortable ways in order to help us evolve through them, to integrate them. For my fellow Carl Jung fans out there, he talks a lot about the Pluto archetype in his work, and that the only way to really live a peaceful, happy, content, meaningful life is to bring that Plutonian stuff to the surface, find the courage or the means to work through it, right? Because so many of us don't remember what went wrong in childhood, or what went wrong seemed so normal to us at the time. It's hard to even recognize or know that in adulthood. But I think a lot of us have been experiencing that on the job, Capricorn being a sign in all of our charts where we're very ambitious and very wealth-oriented, wealth-driven. I think a lot of us have been experiencing it when we interact with certain Saturnine institutions like schools, hospitals, anyone else whose industry went under during COVID and had to work with government agencies to keep themselves alive and afloat. It was a disaster. We could really see a lot of the cracks that are exposing themselves quite loudly now, starting to show their fissures, their fractures back then, when our government, larger social structures and systems were tested on a level they never had been before, or they hadn't been in a very long time, with our first global pandemic in a very long time. We're seeing this in the pharmaceutical industry with prices of things like insulin, with insurance of all kinds, right? Home insurance, health insurance, car insurance, it's all going up and up and up. Meanwhile, it's harder to feel safe and get our needs met than ever. Point being, these are the sorts of systems and scenarios where we have run into examples of our personal devil, our personal purgatory. But true to the devil, it's likely been very deceptive in nature. And this is one of the beautiful things about astrology, is we can go into your natal chart and pull apart this system of code to help you get to the bottom of A, what's been gnawing at you, what's been making your life so challenging, so draining, so grueling, so difficult, and then B, how has Pluto been asking you to transform through it? We're all not here simply to suffer and get kicked in the teeth. Some of our suffering does have a purpose, not all of it, but some of it. And it's one of the wisest, most profound teachers that there is. And so that's going to be our goal together in our 2-hour session, is really helping you get to the root of some suffering, some call to transformation, as well as to get you prepared and gain some insight as to what Pluto through Aquarius's transit is likely to look like for you on a personal level. And if everything I'm saying is resonating for you and you're on a bit of a budget right now because of a lot of what Pluto in Capricorn has represented for many of us, difficult economic times, please feel free to book one of my hour-and-a-half or hour sessions instead, and we will do the best we can in the time allotted. But because this is such a heavy topic, if you can spring for the full 2 hours, I highly recommend it. And so with that, I hope everybody found this helpful today. I hope you students at home took away some good food for thought in preparation for this transit. Please don't forget to hit the like button and please subscribe so that you never miss one of these videos. If you head to my website linked down below, you can book a reading with me, purchase one of my available courses, sign up for my email newsletter, leave me a bit of gratuity if you found this video helpful today, find that free PDF, book recommendations, and more. Wishing everybody well out there, and I'll see you in the next one.